Well, let's stay on this topic right now and bring to the program Mike Bradley. He is, of course, the mayor of Sarnia, Ontario, a city on the border with Michigan. Mayor Bradley, good to see you again. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Michael.
Listen, I want to begin with your reaction. So obviously the United States is expanding the vaccines it will accept for travelers going into that country, now expanding it to include the vaccines approved by the WHO. What do you make of that announcement?
Well, I view it as very positive. That's been a source of concern for many Canadians about the vaccines the Americans would accept, and there was a very small list. So that helps a lot of Canadians who want to travel to the U.S. by air. It doesn't deal with that question that was just raised earlier about the land borders and what's going on there, and will they change the policy of the U.S. that we cannot cross at the land borders, which most Canadians do because of it's affordable, it's more direct. In the city that I'm the mayor of, it used to be a daily trip back and forth for people, and that issue still has not been addressed.
A daily trip, as you say, and part of this is about trying to get back to what was the old normal before the pandemic. So how has the closure of the border by land affected Sarnia?
Oh, Sarnia, Windsor, Sioux, Niagara Falls, you name it, any border city has suffered. We recognize why, and I have to say the people of our communities have been very strong in supporting the reason and rationale for non-essential travelers not coming over here. But personally, I think that we made a huge mistake as a country when we allowed our borders to be open in July to double vaccinated Americans and didn't get a trade-off the same for Canadians. I still do not understand why that happened. I'm not totally optimistic that it's going to change this October. I think the problem is it's not the Canadian border that's the issue for the Americans, it's the Mexican border, and they're doing what they've done many times before. They're treating us the same, and we're not the same as borders or the issues at that border.
So you don't necessarily think this is just about mixed vaccines?
No, I think it's a much greater issue. And the vaccines were a side issue to it. I am glad there's clarity coming now that we now know that people can have the mixed doses and can travel across by air to the U.S. That's a good step. But I want to see the big issue, I think, for the Trudeau government. Now they're reelected. Now they're probably new ministers, that they really need to push hard with the Americans on opening the border for double vaccinated Canadians to treat us the same way that we are treating the Americans.
Mm-hmm. So what is your message? You say you want them to push harder, but what would you say right now to the Trudeau government directly if they're listening to the program in this moment?
Well, if they're listening right now, is to stand up. If you look at the history since Biden was elected, on a number of issues, except for the recent stand-up on Line 5, the pipeline, we aren't getting anywhere with them. We thought with the Democratic government that there would be a much better relationship than with the Trump administration. But we're not getting any victories. And that's the key, is they need to say we need to be treated equally. We are treating your citizens fairly. And I am pleased to see that it's a number of American politicians standing up and saying, President Biden, please open the border to vaccinated Canadians.
Well, that's an interesting point to raise as well, because you being a border city, you must be in conversation with your counterparts in the United States along the border themselves. What are you hearing from them? Is there a plan to have a coordinated effort here?
Well, that's unfolding. The border cities on the other side of the Canadian border are suffering greatly. They depend, in many cases, Port here in Michigan has built major buildings and shopping centers based on Canadian traffic. And yes, they are suffering. And the day-to-day that we talked about earlier, the going to get gasoline, going to get food, that has hurt the Americans. So we need their voice, because there's obviously not listening at any great depth to the Canadian voice saying open the border for vaccinated Canadians.
Mike Bradley, Mayor of Sarnia, Ontario, thank you for this. Always good to speak with you.
Always. Thank you, Michael.